Well, hello guys, what's up? And today we're talking Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yep, we had a week off and here we are. It's good. Yeah, it's good. I definitely was more into like WandaVision, like right off the bat. I was like, yeah, I'm into this. This is doing something interesting. Here it's a lot slower, but I'd say I still enjoyed it. There's some things that I don't think a lot of people will care about that I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Cause yes, we start off with like this big action fight scene, but most of this episode is kind of slow. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine to do a slower, more like setting everything up episode. And I feel like this episode did a good job at that. Yeah, I'm doing this in between watching Justice League, which we will get to. I had a stupid idea and we're going to do it, but we'll do that sometime in the coming week. uh, yeah, no, I'm liking it. This is a very it's because okay, so we had Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was all about like legacy. What is the legacy of Far From Home? What is the legacy of Iron Man? Is Spider-Man the next Iron Man? And I mean, that's the question. So now we come into this and is Sam the next Captain America? That's the question. And he personally, we start off with with Steve, right? The very end, the last scene of Endgame. Well, you know what I mean. Where it's like, oh, the shield doesn't belong to me. It feels like it should be somebody else's. No, it's yours, right? It'll fit in due time. That's where we're starting off here. And he gives the shield to the Smithsonian to put on display because he doesn't feel like he's worthy of being the new Steve Rogers, right? That's his whole thing. Technically, that comes after the fight scene, but we'll get to it in a second. But yeah, so he doesn't feel like he's worthy of it. And yeah, I get that because, Captain America, it's big shoes. God, am I happy we have this man as our new Captain America. And Rhodey's there. And I'm glad we have him as our new Iron Man. I know he hasn't taken up the mantle of Iron Man yet, but I'm sure he will, because I know they're adapting the, what is it, Armor Wars or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I remember Rhodey, Secret, because Rhodey was Iron Man in Secret Wars, right? So I'm like, yeah, he's gonna be our Iron Man, and that's gonna be a cool Iron Man. And I got like, I don't want them to just keep retreading the same thing like every time. So hopefully Rhodey's transition into being our Iron Man is better. But yeah, it's cool to see Rhodey here. And their discussion afterwards about like, oh, are they ready to like take up the mantle? Sam had the opportunity to become the new Captain America, but he doesn't take it. Is, I think, a good discussion, because yeah, that's our new Captain America. That's our new Iron Man. And they're fucking great. And it's so cool to see them. God, the MCU just has a bunch of great actors putting out good performances, and it's cool to see our heroes being heroes. But yeah, it's not like he's given up being heroing or anything, because before that, we see the scene of him out in, he's trying to he's saving a guy, and it's, oh, keep it low key when they blow up like 4 helicopters. And it's the guy, is that I'm digging up this weird memory of like a Captain America villain who's like French, and his like main style of combat is like kicking, and he's called like Lefroy or something like that. Is that, or am I just pulling something out of my ass here? Because the guy's got like the head of this like terrorist or whatever, has like this weird like purple suit or whatever. The scene itself, I know. So I found out after the WandaVision thing last week that, well, I thought the CGI was fine. I thought it was fine. It was passable. I'm not the greatest expert on CGI things or anything like that. As long as it's fine, I'm usually willing to give it a pass. As long as it's not Steppenwolf from Justice League, either of them. I'll admit I think the spiky one looks a little better, but just barely, you know. But we'll get to that another day. But I thought the CGI was fine in WandaVision. A lot of people compared it to a Disney Channel original movie which I think is kind of funny and kind of accurate. I don't know if I entirely agree with it, but I get where they're coming from with that, at least a Disney Channel original movie, but I thought it was fine. And I think the CGI in this is fine. Maybe even it's above fine. Maybe it's pretty good. I don't know. That's just me as the guy who knows nothing about nothing. But I think it's good. And the whole them flying through the air using the squirrel suits and him flying to catch up to them. They blow up like 4 helicopters, like I said earlier. And he goes in, grabs the guy out of one and blows up. But I'm pretty sure the Lefroy guy gets away. The scene, right, going from the plane out into the canyon, right, with the squirrel suits and everything, and blowing up helicopters and getting chased down by a helicopter, and they're on a time limit because they're about to go into Libyan airspace. And he's got the guy, okay, it is the guy down on the ground who is kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't want to hate him. It's just kind of cringe. Yeah, let's use the word cringe. Because when Sam succeeds and he's able to get the guy and escape, and the helicopter blows up right before they enter Libyan airspace, the guy jumps out of the Humvee and is like, woo! Yeah, that's kind of cringe. And then their conversation right afterwards as he's fixed, because the red wing gets hurt, and so he's fixing it up afterwards or whatever. And the guy's like, oh yeah, there's all sorts of, they get like a drink, and it's like, oh, there's all sorts of crazy things going on. There's the Red Hand, which is the new world order or whatever, because they want to like unite the nations, and they believe that the time was better during the snap, because this is what, 6 months after it or something like that. That whole conversation is just kind of, it's forced. Yeah, let's use forced. I mean, the guy's giving it his all, but yeah, it's just kind of cringe. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, it's setting up our villain. The God, what are they? Not the Stonecutters. I don't know. The New World Order, whatever. Who gives a shit? We've set up them now, so that's gonna be, because this show's gonna have like 3 antagonists from what I can tell, if not more. No. Yeah, 3. It's gonna have 3 antagonists. Just because I'm assuming these guys have nothing to do with Zemo or US Agent. If I just had to guess. But yeah, Sam leaves. He goes back. He gives the shield to the Smithsonian. They put it on display. I think that's a great scene. Them talking, them like, oh, what does it mean to be Captain America? The world needs heroes, right? All that jazz. We need an American hero, blah, blah, blah. We'll get back to it. We cut to Bucky, and he's in therapy because, so, right, everyone, well, I said in the WandaVision review that I felt like the snap would have been the perfect time to get rid of the Sokovian Accords, because I know, I don't remember how they get rid of them in comics. I don't remember what they're called. I know they were in effect for like 6 or 7 years in the comics. And I know the MCU barely used them because they put them in, and then like 2 years later, the snap happens. Maybe 3 years. So I know the MCU barely used them, but that would have been like the perfect opportunity to get rid of them. But it's now, oh, hey, everyone who helped defeat Thanos, they've got a pardon. Sam's working for the Air Force, and Bucky's now just a civilian. But as an agreement, he's got to go to therapy. And as part of his therapy session, he's trying to make amends, trying to out all the Hydra agents and make amends with the people he wronged. Because, yeah, there was a scene of him taking out a bunch of people earlier. It's a fine scene. Again, I think most of the action in this is fine. We're definitely back. When people like complain about like standard Marvel action, like the standard like flow of a scene, yeah, this is kind of what they're talking about. We see a scene of him like hijack somebody's car, some senator who was abusing Hydra power, and now they've outed this. Bucky's outed the senator because no killing, no doing anything illegal, and try to make amends are the 3 rules. So yeah, I don't know if the Notebook, like, oh, if that has any like greater meaning. The therapist admits that she was once a soldier, and she like knows what he's going through, that right, the worst thing right now is for him to be alone. Okay. And we see Bucky, he he meets up with an old guy, and my first thought was, is this like one of the soldiers from um Captain America's team back in the first movie? That was my first thought, because I think they make a mention about how like there's less and less of us every day. I want to say he says he's like 90. That was my first thought, because we know, right, Carter was alive a few years ago. Is this guy one of them? Because that was a real question, because I admittedly don't remember any of his like squadron from the first Avenger. No, so it could have totally been. It's not, and we find out later what's really going on. But he's trying to like he's just takes him out to lunch or whatever. The guy hits on a waitress for him, or bartender, whatever, and they agree to go on a date later that night, I think. Again, well, I found the other scene kind of like cringe with Sam and the soldier. This one is more jokey, even though it does get serious, because he talks about his son, which is a little forced, because you know, where it's more just to tell us, the audience, that he had a son, because Bucky clearly already knows. And I'm assuming they've been doing this for a while, so you would think at some point he would have already known that. And back on Sam, he meets up with his sister and her kids, and they're northern Louisiana shrimp farming, and she wants to sell the family boat. He doesn't want to, right? And they get in a bit of a spat over it. But eventually he's like, I got this, right? We can save the family boat. We can save the home. She talks about how everything's gone wrong, right? How everything since the snap has been so difficult for people, because everyone's lost a lot. And then everything came back, but it still affected people. And this is what I like about this episode. Okay, so in WandaVision, we've had scenes of people like coming back after the snap. But in WandaVision, you have that scene in the hospital, and that's a really fucking good scene. But we have this scene here of, right, people who have, because we've heard about people who have lived through the snap and like how horrible it was. But now we're seeing like the results on the people, right? We know it from like what the Avengers did, and like, right, all that, how like the Avengers came back after the snap. But now through Sam's sister, we see everything that's happening to just like your common day people, because Sam's trying to take out like a new loan from the bank, but he was gone for 5 years, so he doesn't have any credit. And now in post snap, a lot of people want loans and whatnot, so they can't get, so even though he's a fucking Avenger, he can't get one. This is the real human side of the snap, right? That interest rates have gone up, and that it's harder to get loans and all this. I know some people aren't going to give a shit about this, but I think that's great world building. Because again, the MCU is one giant connected TV show, and this is people down, picking themselves up by their bootstraps, just trying to survive after everything's come back. And now, yeah, nobody can get loans because, you know, we're still in America and the banks are supposedly too big to fail. But so that's something I really like. That's something I think the whole thing with the sister about this is something that I think is done really well. And Sam's like, oh, it's not over yet. We'll keep talking about this. But I think it's really well done. I that's just something I find super, like, I don't want it to be like the focus of the show, obviously, but it's something I find super fascinating. Just this world, because we're in the MCU's in this weird not unprecedented. I'm sure fiction's tackled this 1,000 times before, but it's in this interesting scenario, and I want to see the human aspect of it. And so anytime we get shit like this, especially because, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to this in real life, because we lost a year to quarantine. We're getting closer and closer to the real, like the point where the MCU takes place in every year. We're almost there. So, right, it's that real side, that human aspect that I really like. Because even though Spider-Man's your local hometown hero, we didn't really get much of that. I mean, yes, there's the stuff with, do they call it Feast? Aunt May's charity in, the beginning of Far From Home. So we get some of that, but this is one singular person, focuses in on that Sam's sister, and I think that's really good. So we find out the soldier who's looking into the hand and he goes to like this meeting, and everyone puts on the mask, money's thrown out, and there's this guy who's basically a super soldier. I don't know if this is, I don't know if this is a comic reference or anything. You've got me there. The soldier gets thrown around because he tries to like stop them, and it's a super soldier. Obviously, you can tell the superpower strength and all that. Beats up some cops. The soldier gets his face kicked in. He doesn't die. He just takes a hit to the head. He doesn't die or anything. And afterwards, he tells Sam about it. Obviously, we'll get back to that in a second. What happens there? Bucky, meanwhile, he goes on his little date. They drink. He's like, he makes a joke about his real age. It's kind of funny. The date's kind of cute, but he starts to freak out as they play battleships for a little bit, and he's talking about like, oh, it's so nice because after his son died, and you immediately know what the fuck is up, because like the old man was like, oh, my son died so mysteriously and they'd never tell me about it. And it's like, something's up. I admit I didn't put together that it was the guy in the dream sequence, the flashback. There's like a random civilian who witnesses him, and that guy dies as well. And I didn't put together until they showed the picture. I was like, oh, okay, because it was very obvious that, oh, Bucky killed him, but it wasn't until that exact moment, because of course I'm an idiot. But I was like, oh, okay, that's okay. And you see, right, he's got the book where he's like, oh, people, right, Hydra agents he's trying to out, and people he's trying to make amends, and that's the first one on his list. So that's why he's hanging out with him. Yeah, it's like, oh, how do you even do shit like that, right? Like, how do you even make amends with something like that? Like, he goes to tell him, but because he freaks out on the date, and he goes to tell, but he just can't. Because, like, how do you? How does someone in his position get closure? And that should be his arc for the show right there. And so we have Sam, and he's watching TV, and his sister turns on the TV, and it's the guy who we saw earlier at when he gave the shield to the Smithsonian. And it's like, no, we need a new American hero. Let me introduce our new square jaw Captain America. And yep, there's villain number 2. Yep. Zemo, the villain the show is about, and then U.S. Agent, the real villain. I don't know anything about U.S. Agent other than that he's like the government's pawn, and he's like, I guess evil Captain America, but it's more complicated than that. Again, I'll always link to Comic Drake. I haven't watched that video yet because it just came out, and I've been watching Justice League all day. And that's what's going to get them, because Sam and Bucky never meet in this. They're all living their own right. Sam's in the Air Force helping his sister. Bucky's off living as a civilian. They never meet at any point, and this is what's going to get them to meet. Is that, hey, this is right, but obviously there's this new Captain America. Fuck that bullshit. And Sam's eventually probably going to fight him and take the shield back, because yeah, and that's going to be fucking cool, hopefully. But yeah, this episode is very slow. I personally don't mind it that much. I think it's a lot of setup, but I personally enjoyed it. Like I said, I find some of the stuff super fascinating. But Bucky's plot is a little less. It's got a little less going on, but it's also takes up less of the episode, so I guess that's fine. I think the action scenes are fine. The CGI is fine. I'm sure some people will complain, but personally, I liked it. I thought, as a start goes, setting up this episode pretty much sets up everything as I view it for the rest of the season, except for like Sharon, Carter, and Zemo. And we'll get to, we already know who both those characters are, so we can just roll into it. Because that's one of the great things about the MCU is we already know who all of these characters are. And this first episode is just a lot of grounding to put us like, hey, it's been 6 months since Endgame. This is where they are now. This is what they're doing. And this is probably where they're going to go in the future. Because Sam's going to have to accept being Captain America. And Bucky's going to try to either make amends for his past or figure out how to live with his past. Because it's just him now. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and I'm curious to see where it's going to go from here. 6 episodes this time, so it's a lot easier to work with. And yeah, I have hope that this will be something great. I mean, we got our new Captain America, and I don't know. I think Sam's pretty cool, and I'm totally I pay respect for my new Captain America, not this U.S. agent bullshit. Yeah, no, fuck him. uh, it's not amazing or anything, but as a setup goes, yeah, it's fine. And we shall see where it goes from here. But yeah, with that, I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, peace.